on the phone with us right now is ex-Aston Villa manager and player Brian Little. Hello, Brian.
Good afternoon, fellas. You all right?
Yes, not too bad. How's it going?
Well, I've just come out of the kitchen. I was just cooking pancakes for the kids there, so it's a nice relief to get out of the way, to be honest. Bit of peace and quiet upstairs. I ran upstairs out the way, mate. I'm fine, thanks. Yeah, everything's good.
Yeah, I suppose it's a nice warm day at home today.
Yeah, day at home. I was supposed to be going over to Dublin today, but I just didn't fancy the travelling across the roads and everything. So yes, I'm at home. I'll with the family today, so nice and quiet. Watch all the sport, or as much as I can. That's to be sure.
Well, that is what we're here to discuss. Yeah. I just want to ask you first of all about your playing career now, Brian.
Okay.
Right. So you're obviously from the northeast. So how did you end up at Aston Villa?
Well, to cut a long story short, from about the age of 12, I was spotted playing for my school, which was the only form of football in my day, many, many years ago, obviously. And I was, asked to go up and have a look around the likes of Newcastle United, Sunderland. The word got round. I eventually went to clubs like Leeds United, West Bromwich Albion, Aston Villa. I went to lots of clubs as a youngster, as a young football player, just during my school holidays and just generally introduced to clubs. But there was always, from the day I went to Villa Park, I don't know what it was. It's hard to describe, but I just liked it. I just felt comfortable there. It was the one club that if they offered me an apprenticeship, I was going to take it. Fortunately, they did. And I left home when I was 15 in 1969. And I remember my dad giving me £1 10 shilling, which put that in my pocket, and I was off into the big wide world and working. And from there on in, I became a professional at 17. But I left home when I was 15-year-old with £1 10 shilling in my pocket, and got on with it really.
Well, Brian, I'm a Villa fan myself, and
yes.
If I must say so, you didn't do too badly for those 10 years.
That's right. No, it was good. I mean, when I was very lucky, even at the age of 15, I travelled with the first team a few times, and there was a very famous youth player at the time, a lad called Jimmy Brown, who was the youngest player ever to play for Aston Villa and was the youngest captain. Now, I was an apprentice at the same time as Jimmy. Unfortunately, his career sort of fell apart at the age of about 20, 21-year-old, which is a massive shame. And obviously mine kicked on from there on in. But Tommy Dockery was brilliant. He introduced me to the first team, and I travelled with them a few times. Sadly, it didn't work out for him. And then when Vic Crow came in as a manager, I was with the first team and in the first team from 17-year-old, which was excellent, really.
And when you did start off there, who were the players at the time? And Villa sort of at the moment lack that sort of experience. Who at the time helped you in that side? I mean, was there players in there which made you feel secure?
Well, they were all men, in fairness. I mean, going back into the early 70s when I played football, it was generally older people who played first-team football, and I was blooded to play alongside an old war horse, and I hope he doesn't take offence to that, but a gentleman by the name of Andy Lockhead, who was, a fearsome centre-forward.
Yes,
Bruce Rioch was in the side. He was the first £100,000 signing at Aston Villa, and he was in the side. But I played alongside people like Trevor Hockey, people like George Curtis. I played alongside all sorts of people who were very experienced in the game, and they were tremendous to me. I was very lucky that I had that type of player surrounding me, and it was easy for me, really, in many respects. Andy Lockhead used to look after me. He always said to me, "You just stay near me, and if anybody gets you, I'll sort them out for you," because it was a rough game in them days. But yeah, very fantastic. I just it was a great experience for me. And one which, I can look back on with great. But I was lucky to play with Andy Lockhead, a lad called Keith Leonard, Andy Gray, of course. Those were the three sort of major type of centre-forwards I played alongside. And each of them, although they were different, they were all brave and strong and were fantastic to play alongside.
And you actually started in the lower divisions, didn't you, when you were breaking into the side?
Yeah, I mean, for the first time in their history, Aston Villa were relegated to the old Division 3 in 1969-70.
Wow.
So, I was part of the revival of the club, really, from sort of 70, 71, climbing out of the third division. I was part of that team. I was part of the team that won promotion back into the top flight Division 1. And eventually retired the year the team won the First Division Championship, and then stepped into to Europe to win the European Cup. But I was retired that year. But I played through a 10-year period in the first team where the club sort of came back from the depths of despair in many respects. And I think a lot of fans remember that period very much so in terms of the club really climbing back to the top flight from nowhere. And people like myself, John Gidman, who were young lads at the club who came through that had a great time at Villa. Fantastic time. It was a great club and still is a great club. And
you mentioned some names that you may have played with. John Gidman, for example, who you're going to be doing this Three Amigos event with, along with Peter With. And if you can tell me a little bit about that, and also maybe tell me about who, at the time, was one of the best players you played with then.
Well, yes. Firstly, I think at the moment, it's very difficult for the fans to get to speak to the modern day players. So, people like myself and the ex-players, a lot of the ex-players now live around the Birmingham area. And we do all sorts of functions. And Peter With and I, especially so, have been trying to entertain some of the fans over the last 6 months. We've had a few nights out where we sit and tell them stories. And only 2 or 3 nights ago, we had a great night in the Tyburn Road at a social club there, which was fantastically good. But in February, John Gidman's flying over from Spain. He lives in Spain now, John, and he's not been very well the last few months, but he's determined to come over. And John Gidman, myself, and Peter With are going to be at the Sacred Hearts Club in Aston on around, I think it's the 21st of February. And we're doing a Spanish theme for Giddy, really, because he obviously lives there. So we're doing a bit of a Three Amigos night, we're calling it. And then we just want to talk to the fans and they can ask us questions. But we're not the only ones who do that. The Kent McNaught and Neil Rioch organise functions from the ex-players' point of view. Yep. And I think it's, all the lads love going out and meeting the fans. We played in a different era than it is today.
Of course.
The players today, it's very difficult for them to mix. They are. They're coming for an awful lot of criticism at times in terms of basically because they earn fortunes, and good luck to them for that. But I think the older player still has the connection with the fans. We in our era we used to go in for a drink into the sports clubs and social clubs. And there was a tight-knit and a tight bond between football players and football supporters in those days. And we just take it on today. So we're still doing that. As with regards to my favourite players and the most talented, Andy Gray was a fantastic partner for me to play up front with. He was a great centre-forward to play alongside. But, most of the lads who won the European Cup in the early 80s, I never got to play with Peter With, but I would have loved to have played alongside Peter. But Gordon Cowans, Dennis Mortimer, all of those boys were fantastic. Desi Bremner, Tony Morley, what a good player Tony was, and of course Young Shorey.
It just sounds like it was just a brilliant side back then. It just you mentioned these names, and all the Villa fans will have heard of them. And unfortunately, your career was cut back by injury, wasn't it? But I want to know, how did you actually make that transition to being a manager?
Well, to be honest with you, I think when I look back at my playing days, like most of the lads, we were a bit wild and a bit daft, and we did some stupid things back in the early 70s. But I think when I stopped playing, I just sat down one day, and it's a bit of an exaggeration, but sat down, looked in the mirror, had a look at myself, and said, "Look, what are you going to do? You want to stay in football." Yeah. I was still only 25 when I last played, 27 when I retired.
It's very young.
I just didn't want to go out of football, so I had to have a good, serious word with myself, to be honest. And say, look, I felt I knew something about the game, although a lot of people would have seen me as a little bit of a maverick when I played the game. And I just tidied myself up, made sure I dressed with a collar and tie every day, did my coaching badges, and surprised myself how far I went in the game as a coach and a manager. It was just something that I hadn't planned, but I just genuinely didn't want to go out of football. So I've been very fortunate. I'm 59 now, and although I'm not working directly in football in the moment, I do quite a bit of work for television, and I speak to the fans a lot. So I'm still connected with football. I've had 43 years of being around professional football.
So, Brian,
I've been very, very lucky.
So, Brian, I've got one question. I'm Henry. And what was your most notable moment as a manager?
Oh, my word. Well, again, to pick one out is difficult. But obviously, if we are in Villa area and Villa territory, winning the League Cup with Villa in 1996 was a great achievement.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe you were the last manager to actually ever win something with Aston Villa.
Well, it still is the case. Although Paul Lambert still has a chance this year of getting to the final. John Gregory took Villa to the final afterwards. So yeah, it's a bit overdue. Someone actually taking that off me, to be honest. But we had a fantastic team in those days. We had people like Mark Draper, Andy Townsend, Milosevic, Dwight York,
yes.
Southgate, as I said, Paul McGrath, of course. We had an excellent team, and they really did fantastically well for me. I was very lucky as a manager in terms of I inherited some good players, but I also brought some very good younger players into the team.
Yes.
And again, we had that perfect mix of experience and youth and enthusiasm. And it was a great achievement back in the mid-90s to win the Cup.
Very interesting to me, actually, because I've watched a lot of footage from the 90s. Mm-hmm. This formation you played worked brilliantly, didn't it? 5 at the back, these 2 wing-backs. We saw Gary Charles bombing down the right-hand side, and you had Wright on the other side. Mm-hmm. What is it right now? I want to know from your point of view, has the game changed so much that this formation doesn't actually work now? Because I've seen Villa try to play it this season and it hasn't been working at all.
Yeah, they did kick into it early in December, end of November, and they won sort of, they had a couple of really good results playing it, but then they went to Chelsea and got carved apart, didn't they, really? And I think that's knocked them off their out of their stride, so in some respects. But, there are still several sides. Certainly Italy used it in the Euros 2012. Napoli play with the 3 centre-backs and have done ever so well in the European competitions over the last few years. It's still pretty prevalent in Italy, in Italian football in some respects. There are several teams, certainly Wigan last season when they were threatened with relegation, switched to that formation and climbed out of trouble. So I don't think it's certainly not out of date, and it certainly can work, but you've got to have the right players to play that system these days.
Yeah, I think.
But I still think it would work if you had the right players to make it as effective as it possibly can be.
I think what really you need is the pacey wing backs, the attacking wing backs, and an actual solid midfield to be able to hold it up.
You do, yeah. I think if I was to be back in football, I still would look at that system as being very, very much a system that I could utilise to bring some success to a club. I still think it would do that.
And would you consider coming back into management? Would you consider maybe using some of these techniques again?
Well, I would like to go back. I'm at this moment in time, I've enjoyed a period of doing some co-commentary work, mostly out in Dublin, and I've enjoyed that immensely. But I still have football very much in my veins, and I still have it in my blood, and I still miss football on that sort of basis. So, you never dismiss it. I certainly haven't dismissed the fact that I wouldn't become a football manager or a football coach again, or some sort of mentor to a younger manager. That would appeal to me, of course. So I, for one, wouldn't say that I'm finished with football. I'm fairly young, 59. I'm always on the move and on the go. I'm quite energetic for my age. So yes, I still think there's a place in football for me, and one day, hopefully, I will come back and enjoy myself again.
Well, you're certainly younger than a lot of the managers in the Premier League, and if I can talk to you about Aston Villa now, you're certainly younger than Martin O'Neill as well. So I want to know what you actually think, from a managerial point of view, from an ex-Premier League manager's point of view, what is going wrong at Aston Villa right now, and what sort of things do Paul Lambert and Randy Lerner need to do to sort of fix this situation?
I think, in fairness, they've had a game plan, and it looks like a game plan from the outside of trying to change the team around and trying to instigate a younger type of a team, and credit to them for that. However, if a young team hits a bit of a bad spell and loses a couple of games, it can lose confidence very quickly. And I think that's what happened when they went to Chelsea. That week before, they went to Liverpool and won 3-1. They went to Norwich and won 4-1. And everybody was thinking, this isn't bad. they've also been hit with some injuries to key players, like I say, Richard Dunn, Ron Blah, who was the experienced man at the back, which they needed. I still feel they need a bit of experience in the centre of midfield. If Blah and Dunn were back, I think they would have the experience at the back. And of course, they have the young Benteke, who needs the right partner up front. Yeah. Whether that be Bent, whether that be Agbonlahor. But I think they've been a little bit unfortunate with injuries. But I do think the team, when it's hit its youngest in terms of the players who've been out there, it's been after that poor show at Chelsea, and that really has knocked the stuffing out of the side. But I think it would be from my point of view, looking from the outside, it wouldn't be wrong to bring a couple of players in now if they possibly could.
Yeah. So
I still think if everybody was fit, then not a bottom three side. But at the moment, the confidence. I was at the game on Saturday against Southampton.
Yeah.
It was never a penalty that was given against them.
No, absolutely not.
But overall, Southampton just about edged the game.
So Brian,
they do need something that I think everybody fit, and yes, I think they're good enough to get out of trouble. But it would be nice to see just a couple of new faces come in, I think, just to give everybody a boost.
Absolutely.
So Brian, very quickly, what are your predictions for Villa's game against West Brom today?
That big derby game that's on tonight, yeah.
Well, yeah, I think at the moment, to be perfectly honest, and I don't like to say it, but you have to put West Brom down as the favourites. I think if Villa get a point out of it today, they'll be happy. So, I'm hoping that is the case. I'm hoping they can sneak a point out of it. But it's going to be a tough game for them. The Albion are a very good side this season. They've got some great options up front with their strikers.
They are.
And credit to their new manager for that. The lad Lukaku looks a good player. Long's a good player. They have lots of variations in how they can attack teams. So I think it'll be a tough game for Villa today, but hopefully they'll get something out of it.
Okay, Brian Little, very, very grateful for you to have you on today. You are a true legend of the game, and well, it's been nice speaking to you.
Lovely. I've enjoyed it. Thanks very much indeed. We'll do it again sometime, okay?
Let's hope so. Thank you, Brian.
Cheers now. Bye-bye.